Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the second part of my 2K subscriber special. This time around, I have a Warhammer 2 2v2 done with a bunch of friends of mine. On my end, I'm going to have the High Elves under Archangel, my old tournament partner, and opposite the field, we have Vislak and Duck. So without any further ado, let's get into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. What's going on, guys? We're not going to spend too much time on the army comps today. If you guys want to see them, they're going to be up there in the corners for you. You can check them out right now. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the replay. My army, my Wood Elf army, is going to be the first one to advance. My ally Archangel is going to hold his ground with his High Elven army. He's going to begin to open fire on the front lines of the High Elves. Meanwhile, of the Dark Elves rather. Meanwhile, I'm pushing forward nice and aggressive, and this is what my army comp is all about. I got a lot of Dryads here, Vanguard deployment. I've also got my Waystalker. It's all about getting in quick, trying to overwhelm my opponent with so many moving pieces in my army. You can see I've got some mounted skirmishers over there as well, which can be a real problem. My Glade Guard finally getting in to range. They're going to begin to open fire on the lines of those Dark Shards. They're going to be forced to retreat. Over here, Bretonnia coming in to the support of their ally. He's seen this strategy before, and he wants to try and break my rush before I can get in there and do any real damage. So those Knights Errant going to be a big problem. Going to open fire on them, however, with my Starfire Shafts. Not going to do as much damage. They all kind of miss. I think that's because of how spread out they are. And Bretonnia is going to have the opportunity to retreat with his forces, taking only minor losses in the retreat. In the center, I've actually brought in my Wildwood Rangers to try and push back that unit of Pegasus Knights. I want to try and catch them maybe sleeping, if I could at all, and get some of that anti-large bonus that the Wildwood Rangers have working for them. Over here on the flank, you can see poor Louan Leoncoeur got himself a little bit caught out. He's actually been suffering two casts of Prey of Anathrama. I want to try and assassinate that Bretonnian general as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the Arrow of Kurnus, despite the fact that he was not able to move, almost missed entirely. Only one of the 3 projectiles hitting him, so he is going to get out of there with a reasonable amount of health left over. I've also got a fair amount of skirmishers in the area to try and slow Leoncoeur down so that I can deal with him in turn. Over here we can see some of the Dark Riders pushing hard against my Glade Riders. I'm going to have to pull them out of there as quickly as possible, not wanting to get them embroiled in close quarters combat with that Shock Cavalry unit. That would be real ugly for my lightly armored, I should say, Glade Riders. So I'm going to pull back and I'm going to draw him into a little bit of a trap. You can see me coming in from the rear with 2 units of Wild Riders with shields. This is SFO, by the way, so the Wild Riders with shields are anti-large, and that is going to be a very, very bad thing for those Dark Riders. If they get themselves caught out there by a couple units of Wild Riders, they are going to melt like nobody's business. Let's go ahead and bring things back up to full speed. You can see in the center, the Dark Elves and the High Elves have begun to butt heads. Archangel moving forward with the entirety of his force, taking some light casualties on the approach from the missile units of both the Dark Elves and the Bretonnians. Over there, beautiful Blade Wind going down by Malekith, followed up with a Chill Wind. That's going to break the High Elven charge there a little bit. Not going to do as much damage, I think, as Vislak wanted it to do, Vislak being the Dark Elf player. And so ultimately, Spearmen are going to make it in there against a very large blob here of Dark Shards backed up with some Bleak Swords. The Bleak Swords are going to beat the Spearmen quite handily. You can already see that they're beginning to lose decisively. So Archangel's going to have to bring in some of his elite forces to try and give his front line a little bit of support. I've actually brought in some of my Glade Guard as well to begin to open fire on the flanks of the Bretonnian army, trying to free up some of Archangel's troops so that he can begin to rout this Bretonnian force. Then he can start to slowly roll up the Dark Elven flank. Over on this end, you can see the Black Dragon has now landed, and he's stuck in here. He gets some Wild Riders and some Wildwood Rangers. This is not a good place for that Black Dragon base, as he is winning decisively, but honestly, he's going to be taking a lot of damage. Now I'm getting to focus fire on him with my Glade Riders. He just jumped out of the way there, missed a lot of that Starfire Shaft ammunition coming in, but honestly, he's not going to be able to stand up to these guys for too much longer. Those Wild Riders, very strong. My Wildwood Rangers this is exactly the kind of fight they want to have. Got my Dryads over here trying to blunt a charge from the Bretonnian Knights Errant. Really don't want these guys in here at all. If I can deal with them quickly, then I'll be able to free up my flank and launch some hammer and anvil attacks into the rear of the Dark Elven center, which is holding out really nicely against my Dryads and my Wildwood Rangers. Over here on my left flank, my Wild Riders getting enveloped by a couple units of Knights Errant, which is going to oblige me to bring in a second unit. Let's take a look at what's going on in the back here. It looks like some of the Royal Hippogriff Knights trying to get into my back lines, caused me a lot of problems. I've managed to trap them with my Lord, and in range of many of my archers. Got the Hagbane tip riders in there, who are going to slow these guys down, prevent them from fleeing as quickly as they otherwise might, and then I'm going to focus fire them with my Starfire shafts. Over here on my left, bringing in my Wildwood Riders. Beautiful charge into the rear of these knights, pardon me, of these knights errant, and that is going to turn the tide of that engagement in favor of, sorry about that, my Wood Elven Wild Riders. Moving on over here to the center, we've managed to, for the most part, break a lot of the Dark Elven army. You can see the Black Guard here butting heads with my my Wildwood Rangers and my Dryads. I actually got a couple units here. One of them is enveloping the Black Guard, so the Black Guard not having a great time right now. Over in the center, we've managed to break most of Vislak's army. Unfortunately, my Wild Riders with shields here are going to be getting repulsed. I am focusing fire down on this large blob with my Glade Riders, thankfully keeping them nice and spread out this time around, unlike the last game I played with Indie Pride where I suffered quite heavily for that. My micro is a little bit more on point this time around. Although, of course, I say that, and now my Glade Lord sitting here taking some pretty heavy damage from those Reaper Bolt Throwers. Thankfully, in support, the White Lions, rather, of Trace of Archangel is going to rout that one battery, but unfortunately, I don't really see what's going on right here. So these Reaper Bolt Throwers are going to have free reign to fire into my Lord. I really need to be paying more attention here, and that's going to be a big problem. Although, luckily, Archangel got my back coming in with his Spearmen. Going to tie up that Reaper Bolt Thrower for a long time. The Bretonnian front line basically been swept away, and for the most part, our armies are in really good shape. Look at this. Got a lot of archers still left to come. Over on this end, though, this is where things are getting really ugly. We got Luan-Leon-Coeur. I just was not able to assassinate him. He managed to escape quite a few times from me, and I just wasn't able to do the damage I needed to. I think with the if the extra projectiles, rather, from the arrow of Kurnus managed to impact his mount, I think that's Beki, then I might have been able to shoot him out of the sky, but unfortunately, he is still around, still being a big problem. He's actually routing a significant contingent of Archangel's archers. There's a lot of archers right here, and unfortunately, they are unsupported, and Luan-Leon-Coeur is doing what he does best, and tearing them asunder. Over here, the Royal Pegasus Knights hunting around, being a big problem. You can see Bretonnia now converging on Archangel's forces. These Spearmen here tying up that Reaper Bolt Thrower. They are starting to get the better of the Reaper Bolt Thrower crews, but all this Bretonnian support coming in, that's going to turn that around real fast. Archangel, I think, sees the danger, firing into the rear with all of his archers. I don't think it's going to be enough. There's some Foot Knights in there. Virtue of Empathy. I'm not too sure exactly what they do in SFO, but the Bretonnian player does have some fairly significant infantry forces that he is able to throw against this very isolated pocket here of Archangel's forces. So now is going to be a good time, I think, to try and consolidate our forces. Over here, this is significant. Look at this. Malekith over here, out in the open with his chariot, trying to get a piece of him. I am going to toss down a Prey of Anathema. I'm just going to use my Arrow of Kurnus, but unfortunately, the Reaper Bolt Thrower routed my general. My general now fleeing for the hills. I'm going to lose my opportunity here to hold Malekith down and destroy him completely. If I was able to do this Dark Elven army, look how low they are in their morale. They would have shattered, and that would be the end of the Dark Elves. But instead, some of Vislak's forces in the back here are going to have the opportunity to reform. I'm trying to prevent this from happening. You see, I got my Wild Riders of Kurnus in the back, trying to run these guys down, keep them fleeing off the battlefield. You can see a lot of shattering just happened there. I managed to wipe out a lot of potential reinforcements. I got my Glade Riders with Hagbane Tips pursuing the Bretonnians and the routing Dark Elven troops far afield, and they're now kiting Malekith around here, trying to get a little bit of chip damage against that Lord, and maybe even slow him down long enough for my Glade Riders, or my Glade Guard, rather, with Starfire shafts to focus in on him. And I would charge into the rear of those Glade Riders with Hagbane Tips. I should have just run right through them. Unfortunately, Malekith is going to be able to get into the back of those Glade Riders and do a little bit of damage. Over here, you can see the Royal Pegasus Knights have routed that contingent of White Lions of Trace from Archangel that was holding down, or was helping to hold down this portion of the battlefield and keeping that Reaper Bolt Thrower busy. Now, unfortunately, they are now back online. You can see my Lord over here. Unfortunately, I didn't micro her very efficiently this time around, and she is going to get caught by Beki, that artillery piece, and those Royal Pegasus Knights, and she's going to flee off the battlefield. Now my Lord is shattered, and my morale is in real danger. I'm trying to deal with this flying menace here. You can see me focusing a lot of Starfire Shaft onto Luan-Leon-Coeur, but it's just not having the effect that I need. Better target would probably be the Royal Hippogriffs Knights, try and wipe them out efficiently, but unfortunately I'm just not doing that. And a lot of my forces here are really expended. I managed to beat most of Vislak's army and rout a lot of his troops, but unfortunately they are reforming now that Malekith is not swept from the field as I had hoped, and my troops are quite depleted from the process of grinding down that Dark Elven force. In the back here, you can see I'm still trying to do the good work, running down some of the Bretonnian infantry, trying to prevent them from presenting a united front here and kill a lot of these kind of low armor, very easily run down targets. But unfortunately, my Wild Riders didn't get the best charge into those peasant bowmen, and unfortunately, they're going to be taking a lot of chip damage from those Pox Arrow peasant bowmen, and it's just really not looking great for me. Over here on Archangel's side, he's got a reasonable amount of troops left. Some of his White Lions of Trace here have managed to reform, but they need to be moving right now. There's a unit there of the Men-at-Arms that they could be charging into, so finally Archangel is going to use them to get a nice charge there into the Men-at-Arms, and that is going to be all she wrote. Although unfortunately a little bit of that arrow fire from behind, getting some friendly fire that might be enough to rout these wavering units of White Lions of Trace. They're going to charge right through those Men-at-Arms, cutting them down left and right. Down here, though, the Foot Knights are faring much better against the White Lions, and unfortunately that unit is going to rout. Over here, though, these other 33 White Lions faring much better. I think as the Foot Knights try and rout through them, they're going to take a lot of damage. And now they are actually a little bit overextended, very exposed on the flank to the archer fire from Archangel. So he's doing a good job here at shutting down this Bretonnian force and holding them in place with his White Lions of Trace. This is not a bad unit to fire into. They have a lot of missile resistance in SFO, about 40% missile resistance, but unfortunately, I think Archangel has lost his general as well, so his White Lions are going to begin to flee. Now in the back lines here, I've still got my Wild Riders of Kurnus doing the, I suppose, Kurnus' work and running around routing a lot of the reforming troops. They're just trying to keep their forces constantly on the run and prevent them from presenting that united front and consolidating the remaining troops. So nice big charge here into the rear. Malekith's going to try and blunt it with a unit with, I think that was his Gaze of Malice, but unfortunately it missed. Didn't really do a whole lot of damage. Malekith, however, is going to come in from behind, and the fact that he causes terror is actually, or he causes fear rather, is going to cause my Wild Riders of Kurnus to flee. And this is one of my, pardon me, this is one of my highest value assets still on the field. So I've still got some forces. You can see a little bit of reforming in the back here. Some Glade Riders. I think they have a little bit of ammunition left, but Fluffy is pursuing me far afield relentlessly with his Royal Pegasus Knights, doing the same thing to me that I was doing with my Wild Riders of Kurnus. Unfortunately, these units are going to get another charge in the rear, and that's going to be all she wrote. I think that's going to be enough, probably, to shatter them. Over here, though, things not looking too terrible. I've still got a couple units of Glade Guard around, although I think they are now out of ammunition at this point. I can see a unit of Knights Errant moving in here against Archangel's wavering archers with heavy arrowheads. I'm going to move in with my Glade Guard, try and cut them off if at all possible. At least get in behind them and cause a little bit of morale damage. And if you look at this, the morale is beginning to drop. They're going for the archers in the center, and they are going to make it in. But unfortunately, as soon as they move out of Luan-le-Ancoeur's zone of influence, they are going to get caught by my Glade Riders and unfortunately surrounded. So I may have a chance here to rout some of these cavalry and maybe give Archangel a little bit of an opportunity to continue to use some of his missile damage. Now in the back here, this is really big. Managed to rout a lot of remaining forces with some of my Wild Riders of Kurnus who came back from routing. We're going to charge right into the unprotected rear of Luan-le-Ancoeur, and that is going to be ugly. Luan-le-Ancoeur is going to take that right on the chin, and that's going to rout the Bretonnian general. So we still have a chance here. With Leoncoeur dead, we might be able to deal with these Royal Hippogriff Knights. Unfortunately, a charge from the rear is going to send my Wild Riders into a panic. They're now terrified. They're going to have to flee off the field. And unfortunately, once that terror bonus wears off, they are going to be routing as well. So that's my final high-value asset. They are now fleeing for the hills, and they're not likely to reform. Most of Archangel's army is in full retreat. A lot of White Lions of Trace running for the hills as well, and that's going to be the end for my Glade Guard. I think Archangel still got a little bit of troops left, but they are going to start to shatter in the face of a fear-causing Malekith mounted on his Cold One chariot. And that is going to be a very narrow victory for the forces of Fluffy Duck and Vislak. It was a really good game. Very, very close. I still have one unit left remaining here. My unit of Waystalker managed to rout that unit of Knights Errant. It was a very intense battle, a lot of micro involved. Obviously, I still have a lot to learn when it comes to playing this game, but I really do enjoy the Wood Elves for that aspect. If you noticed from my roster, I had a lot of moving parts, and again, that is my strategy when I move in to games with the Wood Elves. I want to try and out-micro my opponent, because one, it's a nice challenge, it helps me improve, and two, it is a weakness that a lot of players seem to have. If you can overwhelm them just with sheer micro, keep them busy, and maybe even panicked a little bit in a whole bunch of different places at once, then you can end up getting the opportunistic charges and rear fire and hammer and anvil strikes, especially with those Wild Riders of Kurnus, that will win you games for sure. Wild Riders in SFO, very, very strong, very tanky, although they are low number, but the 32% ward save, though, they can stand up to a lot, but unfortunately I just wasn't able to leverage them in the hammer and anvil charges that I needed, and there you go. The end of the battle right there. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of the stats. Now, my Dryads did not do amazing, but that is not what the Dryads are there to do. They are a meat shield unit with, when they're above 50%, I think they get an extra 10 armor, so they have like 75 armor and like 11,000 HP. They are a wonderful tar pit and an absolutely important addition to this lineup because it sets you up for those hammer and anvil charges. Now, I've got enough cav here. You can see I got 2 units of Glade Riders and 3 units of Wild Riders with shields. That is enough cav to generally overwhelm the fast-moving forces from your opponents, and the Wild Riders are tanky enough, again, with that 32% ward save, that they can stand up to just about anything. So if you can get the Dryads stuck in quickly, support them a little bit with the Wild Riders, or with the Wildwood Rangers, and then come in from the rear with the Wild Riders, you can get a lot of kills. Look at this, 170 almost on that one unit, 60 on this unit. This one did not do quite as well. I think this is the unit that got surrounded, so a lot of those are cavalry kills. My Glade Guard Starfire Shaft's not doing as well as I wanted to, but really you have to account for a lot of the HP damage that these armor-piercing missiles can do. Now up here, these are the most important portions of this army. I mean, obviously your general is important for morale reasons, but the Glade Lady comes with a Prey of Anathrema and I believe 3 charges of Arrow of Kurnus, and the Waystalker has the same. So at the same time that you're moving around being really quick, you can also deny your opponent movement on some of their key entities, like you saw earlier with Louan Leoncoeur. If I was able to just focus him down and get more damage, if my Arrow of Kurnus didn't miss, for example, I would have been able to kill him a lot sooner. And that would have been a really big problem for the Bretonnian forces, who are quite traditionally very low on morale. Let's take a look here. Enough about my army. Let's go take a look and see how Archangel did on the front line. I mean, some of those spearmen did a lot of work. 81 kills on a spearman unit. That's incredible. 44, 52, not bad at all. Some of these units, I think, got overwhelmed. The White Lions of Trace, though, they did some serious work. 79, 102 on that unit. Only 23 over here. I think this is a lot of like late game shattering after Teclis was taken down. I'm not entirely sure what happened to Teclis, but it's entirely possible that he was just focus fired down by the large number of missiles present on the opposite end. The archers with heavy arrowheads, don't know too much about them. Again, still learning SFO, but they are pretty decent. I think a lot of the cavalry of Archangel, including his Dragon Princes and his Silverhelms, really struggled against the Bretonnian cavalry over there on our right flank. A lot of the Bretonnian cavalry is anti-large, whereas the Silverhelms are a little bit better at taking down infantry, and they lack an anti-large bonus entirely. Dragon Prince is very, very tanky in this. I think they have like a 15% ward save, something similar to the Phoenix Guard, but ultimately they do not have anti-cav in this either, so they were overwhelmed by the forces of Fluffy Duck. Take a look here at the forces of Vislak. Malekith doing a lot of work. We saw him drop a pretty decent enough Blade Wind, followed up by a Chill Wind on some of the High Elven units as they were moving in their initial charge, and doubtless that got him a few kills right there. Blackguard of Naggarond held out really well in the center against my Dryads and against my Wildwood Rangers. Ultimately, though, they were overwhelmed, but they definitely held their ground long enough and dealt out some serious damage in return. Vislak's main line didn't do too badly. On his, I believe, right flank, he got overwhelmed really quickly. The Bleak Swords just weren't able to stand up to the Dryads. I was able to flank them a little bit. These 4 units, they paid for themselves, definitely. 64 kills on that one right there. That's not bad at all. Dark Shards didn't really get a whole lot done. They kind of got tied up a bit. Attacked from the rear by my cavalry, or tied up by my Dryads, or attacked by Archangel Spearmen. So they just weren't able to bring the value, I think, that Vislak really wanted. Down here, the Cold One Chariots, they really got shut down. The Dark Riders just weren't able to do anything. They got sandwiched, as you saw, by my Wildwood Riders, and quickly swept from the field. Cold One Knights didn't do very well either. I think that's because I managed to shut them down with a Dragon's Breath and things like that. The Cold One Chariots, not so great. This one, I think, routed pretty well early, got shattered. The Reaper Bolt Thrower, though, doing some serious work, especially when it came to the HP damage it did to my Lord. That was a decisive moment in the battle. If I was able to take down Malekith, Vislak would have crumbled, and Archangel and I would have been able to focus on Fluffy uniquely, and that would have been the end of the game. So that was a game-winning thing right there that this Reaper Bolt Thrower did. That was a serious play. Moving on now to Fluffy Duck's army. Louan Leoncoeur getting a decent amount of kills. It really just can't account for the amount of HP damage and the terror bonus that this guy did. We saw that he routed so many of Archangel's archers, and that really proved to be just a huge problem for us. We just weren't able to keep that skirmish fire going, and a lot of those archers, I think, ended up shattering as well. The Bretonnian mainline infantry, I mean, the men-at-arms, they did all right. 27 on this is probably as good as I think you could ever hope for. 3 is, it's not great, but again, Bretonnia, not amazing when it comes to their infantry. Foot Knights, Virtue of Empathy, did fair amount of damage right there. I mean, 80 kills, not bad at all. The peasant bowmen with pox arrows mostly got routed. Most of Fluffy Duck's cavalry was destroyed, but the Royal Pegasus Knights really brought a lot of value to this army in terms of harassing my back lines, preventing reforming from happening, and from getting some nice rear charges that actually routed some of my more important assets, like my Wildwood Riders, for example. So that's it for this battle. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2,000 subscriber special. I hope that you will enjoy. I hope that you will join me. You'll probably see this on Tuesday, so I hope that you will be joining me this Tuesday for some streaming and some fun on Twitch. But in case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who supported the channel so far, and in particular, I want to thank a few people, especially those from the Reforged community, Joey and Kuro and Sin and the rest of the Reforged team. I would not be here making this video, honestly, I would not, if I didn't have the support of the Reforged community and Reforged wasn't such a big fan favorite. So thank you to everybody who's watched my videos so far. Thank you to the team for supporting me and letting me be involved in the development process and letting me have some exclusive access to maps and things like that. It's really appreciated, and yeah, I honestly, I don't know what I'd do without you guys. So other than that, there's a few other people. Vislak, Fluffy, Sawbones, they've all been big supporters of the channel. Glowbox as well has sent me a bunch of replays. Blood Magpie in particular. I know a lot of people probably don't watch the Attila replays that he sends me, but they are always very entertaining. And Blood Magpie has been a very big part of my channel for quite a long time. Actually, he's the only reason that I have Attila content pretty well exclusively. So big thank you to him. And if I missed your name, it doesn't mean that you're not important. It just means that I have a little bit of time here, and I don't. Yeah, it just means that it slipped my mind. But it doesn't mean that I don't value your support. But in any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys have enjoyed this double feature, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.